Jeffrey, thanks so much for joining me. It's great to see you again. How are you?
I'm doing somewhere between fabulous and outrageous.
Oh, I love it. That's great. I think one of the top priorities on people's minds is health, good health, how to be healthy. And part of that, I always like to think of it as being in alignment, heart, mind, body, soul, all in balance. And one of the things you do as a QHHT practitioner, BQH, which I would love for you to explain more later, and a strategic intervention life coach, which sounds so awesome. You help people find that balance and come to that alignment. And I just thought, what a great opportunity to share some of your wisdom of who you are and what you do with people so they know that there are so many other ways to get healthy that goes beyond just the physical. So thank you so much for joining me, and I would love to talk with you about that.
Well, thank you, Sophia. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here as always. And I'm looking very forward to our chat today because you are a person of such high consciousness and exposed to so many different topics, so many different interests. And it's just a real honor to be here. So thank you for inviting me on tonight. As far as the BQH, QHHT goes, it's been a very rewarding practice because we're really effectively bringing people to a higher consciousness, and the key word is healing, not curing, but healing. And healing is something that we need on many different levels because there's many different parts of us. When we, engage in this sort of a healing modality, what we are doing is we're getting in touch with our higher self. And whether anybody realizes it or not, I think that's one of our highest aspirations in life, is to make that connection, because there we dissolve all fear and we can navigate through so much suffering that we've endured in our life. Without getting too deep into it, we have certain lessons to learn in life, and there's certain what you might call catalyst that we program for ourselves to kind of keep us on track. So what we're doing is we're really getting in touch with our higher self, learning the reasons we're going through some of what we're going through, learning the lessons, and then once the lessons learned, we dissolve the catalyst or dissolve the experience, the pain, the suffering. And it's pretty powerful.
That actually sounds really exciting to be able to dissolve pain and suffering. So I know our bodies, pick up on everything. We literally cannot lie to our bodies. We don't always listen to our bodies, but to really connect with a higher self. Now, this might be completely new concept to so many people. What exactly does that mean, connecting to your higher self?
I love that you asked that question, because when people come to me and we start our conversation, it could quickly turn into a coaching session, or a Reiki session or something like that. And I right away declare, I am not here to be your energy healer, your coach, your psychiatrist, your psychologist, or anything like that. I'm here to simply connect you to your higher self, where there are your answers. There is the access to your healing, and it can be some very profound healing. So when we access the higher self, Dolores Cannon, who created the whole modality of QHHT, she talked about how the subconscious was a source of incredible information and a vast amount of healing, effectively, because you can just ask it to heal something, right? Because when we gain the awareness of the meaning of something, the lesson, and potentially see something in a past life, it's kind of the objective, is we go and so we view things in a past life. QHHT is all about past life regression, right? So we're bringing a person to a relaxed state where they clear their mind of all the clutter. Now they have that clarity to receive the images and pictures from their higher self. The higher self, the subconscious, as Dolores Cannon called it, is totally in charge of what you're seeing. And if you think about it, you could be a trillion different images that should come into your mind. Why this particular image that does this particular thing, right? There's some intentionality there. That intentionality is your higher self talking to you in the language that it knows. So when it shows you these events in your past life, you are gaining an awareness of something that happened to another incarnated body. Once you have that awareness, and certain levels of your body are paying attention to this, it says, oh, that's not this body, that's not in here, it's from there. Oh, I guess I don't need this. So the body dissolves it, right? So this is one of the mechanisms of past life regression. This is one of the things we do. But getting back to the higher self, it is in charge of what you see. It loves you. It wants the best for you. It will never show you anything that will take you backwards. And it's there for you.
I have to ask, do you ever have people who come in who really want to connect and really, find answers to whatever their question is? Do you ever find that there's a lot of resistance for them connecting? Like maybe they're scared or they really don't believe it, but they want to believe it? Or what do you do in that case? Or does that happen often?
Almost never happens. Well, there's people that have resistance. I guess what almost never happens is everybody gets into that beautiful state and we have a connection with their higher self. Yeah, there's just certain people that have a little bit more resistance. It's a little more effort, that's all. The thing is, if they've come to see me, they already have a willingness to explore their issues. If somebody is on, heavy medications, there can be some what we call contraindications, I guess, where it may not be the easiest thing to do. We have ways to approach it. Hypnosis may involve breath work. Okay, it's a lot of work, but you could go through a half an hour of breath work and then start viewing past lives. So we can do that. The key is to have somebody who wants to cooperate, right? If they're willing to heal, if they're ready to heal, we'll get the work done.
What kind of issues do people usually come in to see you for?
All kinds of things. And I contemplated this before we spoke, and it seems to be about half of the people have some kind of physical or emotional issue they would like to tackle. And it seems like the other half just wants to know life purpose and life mission. So they may be just curious to experience QHHT, and God bless them, because it is a very powerful and rewarding experience. When I had my first session, I had no agenda. I had no expectation. When I had my interview with the practitioner, and she was wonderful, I learned, hey, wait a minute, I could actually heal something. So, I just wanted the experience to perform my due diligence before engaging in the training and the practice. What I found out was incredible healing. I lost my migraine headaches. How wonderful was that, right? So I would say, getting back to the question, half the people come to heal some real thing, and the other half really have life mission, purpose, my life path curiosities, that sort of thing. What should I do? What's my best career path? Do I stay with this spouse who's not keeping up with me, who may not be treating me right? All those sort of things are within the realm. It's pretty amazing.
Do you find right now that there's been like a huge shift in energy with the people you have been seeing? Because I know there's this global shift of energy happening, but do you find it happening within people who come to see you? Like there is a different energy as before, like before last year?
I will say this. Everybody who's come to see me this year has been very high vibrational. Most everybody. There was one case where a gentleman came and he really did not know the process. He knew nothing about it. And, but he wasn't a bad guy at all. He was a pretty nice guy. He just wasn't in touch with the whole his spirituality as many other people were, I would say.
That's really interesting. So what's the difference between BQH and QHHT?
Good question. So QHHT is the original method that Dolores Cannon taught, which she refined over the course of good 40 years. And it was her method to bring a person into that beautiful, relaxed state, guide them through viewings, open up a conversation with the higher self. This is really one of the biggest parts of QHHT. And then bring them out in a very appropriate method that leaves things in the past or brings positive things forward. Now, the key about QHHT is it allows the higher self, or the subconscious, as Dolores called it, to be totally in charge of everything. Okay, so it decides if you go way back in the past, you could have a parallel life, you could have a future life, you could be a animal, vegetable, mineral, you could be past, present, future, you could be this worldly or otherworldly, right? So your higher self is totally in charge of the ball game, right? It doesn't mean we couldn't at some point direct people to a certain life.
Right.
I believe the very first session, though, where you're focused on healing and that sort of thing, is where we just allow the higher self, the subconscious, to be totally in charge. So that's QHHT as a baseline, and it's an in-person modality.
Wow.
The Academy is very adamant about that. It's in person. There's no doing it online for QHHT. Now, we turn to BQH, Beyond Quantum Healing, which was crafted by Dolores Cannon's close student, Candace Craw Goldman. And she crafted a method that was pretty doggone close to Dolores's own method. And the protocols to perform on Zoom were built in, right? There are some safeguards. There's a slight difference in the induction so that people go into that nice, easy state online. And we learn to work online. BQH also allows for more flexibility. So if you want to do some energy healing, if you want to do some alchemy, if you want to even break it up into 2 sessions, you can do that, right? QHHT is typically done in 1 session. It could be broken up into 2 halves, but typically it's 1 session. And we generally dedicate the day to it as a practitioner because it's a lot of energy. But that's the long and the short of it. Yeah. And they're both very effective.
Okay. Well, I would think because it's an ongoing global situation, even though it is changing. And it's kind of nice to think that you are across the country and we're connecting. So, for someone to do a session with you online sounds really convenient too.
Oh my goodness. I've done session with people in Australia. At the same time, people have visited me physically from Hawaii. So, it's a far-reaching thing, whether you're online or in person. And yeah, we can work online. I've worked with people on almost every continent except Antarctica.
How many times does a person generally see you to resolve an issue? Is it several times or just once? Or
We could work several times, sure. A lot of the times, Dolores Cannon didn't want it to be like a chiropractor visit where you come every single week. That kind of situation would only unfold if you were doing research. You had like a weekly visit to explore, like, for instance, in her books, like Conversations with Nostradamus, she had subject that would visit her regularly, and she would go back to the same place, open up the same conversation, and continue. That's totally within the realm of possibility. When people are doing it for healing, we may be exploring or going deeper into a life we had seen before. And that's absolutely possible. Yeah. Or you have maybe new issues that come up in your life. It's very therapeutic to go and have other sessions. Sure. So it's not but something that Dolores Cannon wanted people to look at as a chiropractor visit, because a lot of times you need to integrate what you learn, right? So you'll take some time to integrate it, and you'll have new insights come up along the way,
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you an example. If people ask, well, what's the right thing for me to do? And the higher self might say, well, she'll know what to do when the time is right. So they won't always give you the answer right away. if they gave you the answer, sometimes it would get in the way of you actually learning the lesson. So I don't know how many people have ever done a math problem, right? So solve this equation. You can't solve the equation by just somebody giving you the answer and you put a box around it. You've got to think through the steps so you finally understand it. You know what I mean?
Right. So what I think is, okay, we're definitely in very changing times right now. I mean, no matter how you look at it, it's all shifting. Like life as we knew it will never be the same, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But so many people I know, or friends on social media, they're all at a point where they feel like they want something new. It's like whether they've been a teacher for 20 years, or or a lawyer for 30 years, they decide that they want something different, but they don't know what. But they feel like there's just like this burning desire to do something. But having a session with help something like that, where you just like, you don't really have a physical problem, and you're not really sure what you want to do, but you want, and I don't really want to say life's purpose, because they've already had a life's purpose of do whatever they have, or part of that life. But how something like a QHHT session or BQH could be helpful, right?
Absolutely. This is frequently what we deal with is, what's my next step? What's my right direction? And some people I often get, I feel like I need to be in the healing modalities. What's my best healing modality? So not only do we get a beat on that, but we can actually up level their intuition and their intuitive abilities.
Ooh.
I've had people say, wow, my visualization is off the charts these days. My intuition's off the charts. So we can even up level their intuition.
Oh.
But yes, we can get clarity on their career path, on their direction. And a lot of it is about increasing the feeling of worthiness. Because when people feel unworthy or they feel not good enough, they have reservations and resistance to moving on to their path. So we often find things that create those feelings of unworthiness and can dissolve them. Yeah.
It's amazing how it's all just so connected. That's really exciting. Are there ever any cases that just really stand out to you, like they would be like your landmark client, where you're just like, wow, that really just happened?
Oh my goodness, yeah. And it's different categories. So there's the physical healing, and there's the vision of New Earth. There's the vision of, galactic history, universal history. And of course, there's the emotional ones. I had a woman who was severely depressed, very worried, just didn't know what she was going to do, worried out of her mind. Her husband was really treating her poorly, and she was really about to get divorced, and she had to leave her living situation. And I don't know if we talked about this one before, but it was just amazing. She, was not a textbook session. Her subconscious didn't really have that flowing conversation that we usually had, but she had some incredible viewings, and saw herself as a reptilian being among minions, right? With a Jabba the Hutt overlord giving them instructions. And she was directed to go spy on the human and come back and report back. Well, finally, the Jabba the Hutt came to see her and said, okay, here's what you're going to do. You're going to harm the human in some way. And she refused. She said, I don't want to harm the human. For whatever reason, she stood up to that Jabba the Hutt. That took an incredible amount of courage. Well, the Jabba the Hutt, with his psychic energy, blew up her head. Yeah, it was almost comical, but you got to stay composed through the whole thing, because this is a healing event. And, the after talk about that event was that, look at how much courage you had to stand up to that being, and look at the love in your heart, the compassion you had for that human to not, do whatever you had to do. And that resulted in her calling me back the next day saying, Jeffrey, I'm so happy. I'm so relieved. I don't know what happened, but I feel so good. She called me back a week later and said, wow, Jeffrey, I found a new place to live, and I'm really happy. She called me back a month later and said, I'm getting all these gigs now and I'm really happy. So it can happen when you least expect it, you know?
Wow.
So I like to say that things can happen automatically without any conscious, rhyme or reason to it.
Right.
Yeah. So
Wow.
that was one reason. That was the emotional side. On the physical side, oh my goodness, I love when a woman had thyroid issues.
Mhm.
She had been taking medication. Well, after her viewing, she was so funny. In her viewing, she was so subjective in the viewing, and she felt that I was in there with her, seeing these things she was seeing. And oftentimes, I do have the same imagery in my mind going with them. And I
Mhm.
said, "Well, who is that guy there? What's he wearing? What's he like?" And she got a little upset with me. She goes, "What do you mean? What does he look like? Can't you see him? He's right there." But she was one that came back to me a few months later and says, "Oh yeah, I'm not taking my thyroid medicine anymore. My thyroid's all better." I'm like, "Wow."
Wow. That's great.
So that was pretty good. And diabetes too. A woman says, "Well, my doctor can't figure out why my blood sugar's down."
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I could talk about a whole bunch more, but these are kind of nice, dramatic ones.
How about one when you have like really tight muscles because you're like really stressed out and
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Neck and shoulder pain, sure. Yeah, we can see trauma in a past life. A woman came to me with back pain she'd had for 30 years, tried, everything,
Mhm.
and she called me a week later, said, "Jeffrey, my back pain's gone after 30 years."
Wow.
I was so touched. I was so happy. I loved it's so fulfilling when people receive their healing. It's not me doing it. I'm just the flashlight.
Right.
But they're so invested in the process and they receive it so well. You know what I mean?
Right. Do they ever have relapses once they've been healed, or does it ever like fall back or?
It's possible to be triggered. What we do is we give everybody a recording, and you use the recording to listen to with some frequency, whether it's a couple of times a week, maybe every night a week, maybe a couple of times a month. You can go back to that if you find yourself lapsing back into some, state
Mhm.
of mind, or physical condition comes back or something, which doesn't always happen really. People, once they get the healing, they keep it.
I like
But
that.
you have this recording as a support, and that's just, you hear the sound of your higher self. It's a very high vibrational, very healing vibration for you, and it reminds you of what that lesson is that you learned,
Oh,
right? The key to keeping your healing is to give up the payoff that you might have been receiving for having that affliction. And let me tell you about a classic example of that.
mm,
So, the father of hypnosis, some call him the father, Franz Anton Mesmer, back in
mm,
the times of Mozart, okay, um, had his methods to hypnotize people and cure them, well, heal them rather. And this woman, Mary Parisa, she was a daughter of a noble and a musician. She had some kind of hysterical blindness. And she visited Franz Anton Mesmer for some visits and was healed of her blindness.
wow.
Very interesting, right? Well, when thoughts of losing her disability pension set in, she thought, well, I can't lose that. I better get my blindness back. So she took the affliction back and she reverted. So
Wow.
that's a clear example of clinging to that
Mm.
crutch, clinging to that payoff, contract with
Stick with,
fear, I think
yeah,
they call it. Yeah.
yeah. But that's kind of sad, to
It
have a
is.
new opportunity. Well, it just seems like, yeah. It just seems like we're all being faced with new opportunities right now, with everything that's happening, and to really make a choice to choose a new opportunity. And it is scary. So I would think that when people go to you, for healing and not really, and aren't really clear on what they want or really what they need, but they're interested in like finding answers, it's like they're kind of taking a leap of faith, right?
Yeah. It's about dissolving fear. And we as practitioners, past life regressionists, QHHT, or BQH, one of our tasks is to, in the conversation with the subconscious, persuade them to give up that payoff. So we get them out of fear. For instance, if Maria Purisia had a QHHT practitioner, if Delores Cannon was around back then, she would have talked them out of holding that fear. She says, you know what? You're healed now. You can be a musician. You can support yourself. In fact, you can become way more successful than, subsistence on this little pension. So we are always talking them into a better way, a way of being without fear, and we can talk to them not just directly. We might use imagery. We might have them call to mind an image that represents their fear, and we'll work with it. And once we do that, that leads to the dissolution of that fear, and they just almost magically feel better afterwards.
How do you find out this information about people? And you obviously don't know them. Do you talk with them before the session, or do you have, what's your process?
Well, half the session is about talking about your life story. Because when we know the important events and the important people in your life, we know how to talk to your subconscious, right?
So what if you get someone who's like a real talker, my life, and the next 10 hours, like, wait a minute.
It turns into a long session. It's okay. I usually enjoy it. We usually take a couple of hours to talk about the life story. We work in the questions. I'll have questions. We make sure we understand the questions. I might refine them a little bit, add or subtract. Sometimes we don't have to ask the question because the life viewing will answer the question directly. It just happened to me the other day. She had such a profound healing, getting rid of, something from a past life that was absolutely directly related to her question. There was no need to bring it up in the conversation because it was already healed.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, good. All right. So you mentioned New Earth a while ago. As everything's shifting and changing, it's like there is a newness coming. Of course there is. But what exactly is New Earth?
New Earth is essentially a new reality for us. One could call it heaven on earth. Okay. Dolores Cannon talked about Earth separating into two, right? So you had the higher vibrational people entering a realm of heart-centered communities, loving, compassionate, no need for money. Everybody lived in synchronicity. And of course, you had the lower density Earth, which is in a way falling away. And those souls might go on to another planet, another planetary sphere of the same density to continue on their lessons. And it's no judgment, I look at it this way. It's like going to the gym, right? Every life for us is another exercise. It's another machine in the exercise circuit, right? Now, if your goal is to lift 300 pounds on the bench, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a lofty goal. It's a respectable, goal to have. And let's say you're only capable of lifting 200 on the bench. Mm-hmm. Do you want to leave the gym and graduate to the competitions yet? No. You want to keep exercising. And that, I believe, is what our soul chooses to do when they go on to that next third density, rather than ascending to a higher density of consciousness. When I say density, it's really density of light. Light as being more and more dense within your body is consciousness, is how we refer to it. It's a whole other discussion.
It's so exciting because I can feel the shifts happening. I see it in people I know, and I've, even work with, where there are just these differences, and some of them are subtle, some of them are obvious, but it's just something is definitely going on. And so I think when someone can really be aware and then start taking accountability for who they are, and like trying to find their own alignment, know that they have an issue that they want to get past, or want answers to questions that they've always asked, I think something like QHHT would be a great great answer for that, to help them take that next step.
Yeah.
I feel
And
like I'm losing my voice. I'm sorry.
yeah. One of the biggest focuses, I believe, is to learn your life mission, to learn your life plan. Because when you're in your plan, that's when you have the least amount of suffering. When you're off your path, your higher self is actually going to steer you back, and he's going to use a little discomfort to do that. In some extreme cases, there's some pretty extreme catalyst. It could be being maimed or a
Oh,
severe illness. It
mhm.
could even lead to death. Although, most people don't experience that extreme kind of catalyst.
Mhm.
But when we learn our life mission, as we take that as our prime objective, that's probably the most powerful thing to dissolving a lot of the pain and suffering that we go through.
I like that.
Yeah,
We always have options, right? No matter
we
what.
do. Yep. And, to that point, we might want to explore contracts,
Mhm.
because we often have contracts to carry some of this catalyst. It could be a lifelong lesson. So if we did something in a past life that affected somebody for their lifelong experience, maybe we have to have a lifelong experience as well. So there may be some things that we're allowed to dissolve and some things maybe we're not. So it's all about learning lessons. And this is, again, where we as practitioners might negotiate with the subconscious and say, well, haven't they learned that lesson? Don't you think? Well, no, they have to carry it. Well, can you just at least give them some relief and make it a little easier for them? Yeah, we can do that. They won't hurt as much. So sometimes that's as far. And the other thing is, when they accept it, when they learn the lesson, they feel much more at ease, and a lot of other things go much more easily for them in life.
I like that. It's very exciting. It's just very exciting.
It's very powerful. I mean, this isn't something that just showed up like, 50 years ago. Past life regression originated in antiquity. So if you look at the Egyptians, you look at the Greeks, they had sleep temples. The Greeks called it asclepions, and they believed that if they would go there and be brought into a state of sleep or trance, I don't know if they had the same word for trance, but it was something like a sleep, that it would be, herbs or mantras. The priest would say his things, and you'd go into a trance state. They'd wait for the Greek god of Asclepius to show up to bring them healing in the dream.
Oh, wow.
Right? So that was how I believe many of the past life regressionists in the past understood that it was healing.
Why do you think it seems like there was a really long time where people just didn't want to talk about it, where they really wanted to shut that down. It's like there's no such thing. It, it, why do you think that was? Why do you think they didn't want people to know?
Like, deny the existence of past lives?
Right.
Oh, yeah. It's very empowering when you know that your consciousness doesn't die, right? If somebody says, "Oh, this is the end. You have to spend eternity in this horrible place," that's very frightening, isn't it? Well, I believe that's how the power structures would boss us around, right? That was their leverage. And pleasure, pain, incentives were very powerful. But once you dissolve the fear of death, so much more becomes possible for you. And I think that's the one of the biggest things we dissolve in this practice is the fear of death. Because if you're not scared of death, your whole life becomes different. You know, um, you're just not scared by others. There's layers and layers of this fear of death in us. We get these messages every single day in the society, and it's a deep well to dig ourselves out of. So it may be a process to, lift ourselves out of this fear of death. But, they use it against us on a daily basis to coerce us into the behaviors they want us to be in. Whether it's buy a certain product or go to a certain place, get a certain service. Oh my God, I have a fear of death. I have to go get this thing which is going to make me live longer, or whatever. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Wow. It's, so that made me think too. It's like, I know there was a time when we had this fight or flight type thing where, cavemen had to like run from, the big cheetah or the big animal after it for dinner. But then I think too, it's like, well, it's not just those types of people. We have all different types of humans. And I like to think some of them come from other planets, just because of the higher way of thinking, as opposed to the more 3D guttural level. So when you have past lives, can you go back? And I think you kind of mentioned it before, actually go into the different planetary realms, different solar systems, different galaxies, for that soul's journey? Or is it just pretty much like earthbound?
That's a great question. You can absolutely go to other planetary spheres, other realities. I have all different kinds of things show up. In fact, my very first session involved a viewing of a three-fingered blue being. And the woman had dreams of it all night after her session. She just saw it so vividly that it was very much very real thing to her. So, anyways, we see a lot of different beings. We see a lot of human beings on other planets, you know? We see angelics. Now, we see colors and lights surrounding us, feelings of joy and bliss and peace. Nothing really happens there. There's really no time. Why do we see that? Why do we experience that in a past life viewing? It's your higher self showing you this possibility of living in bliss, total bliss. In fact, it's not just a possibility, it's your soul actually experiencing this, you feeling that vibration right there in that moment. When you feel that vibration of utter bliss and love and connectedness, you're going to remember that. And as you remember that and carry that feeling with you, you're going to magnetize it to you in your reality.
Wow.
And this would lead us into a discussion on manifestation and creation. And I'll give you if I might give you a little
I would love that. That would be
teaser.
awesome.
Yeah, so manifestation and creation. I mean, many people probably have heard of Esther Hicks channeling the entity Abraham. Talks a lot about energy and our intention and that sort of thing. And there's any number of spiritual teachers can talk about manifestation and creation, but the engine of it boils down to four things. There's a rule in physics called the right hand rule, where the magnetic field goes like this, the current goes like this. All right. Anyways, I won't get technical, but I'm using the same hand to do the same thing. So I have my belief. Okay, I have my thoughts, my vision, my language, and my action, right? If my thoughts and my feelings and visualization, those are kind of the same thing. If those are going one way, and it's easy to do that, I can think of what it's like to, drive a Rolls Royce. I can feel it, I can visualize it, right? That's the easy part. Languaging it, right? I have to say things that are in congruence with that belief. I have to do things that are in congruence with that belief. For example, would I be saying, "Oh, I can't afford a Rolls Royce"? No. If you're going to manifest it, you better not be saying "I can't afford." You better language something in a different sense. Like, wouldn't it be nice if I had the money for that Rolls Royce? Wouldn't it be nice if I could drive a Rolls Royce, right? Don't even talk about the money. Or how about the actions? Well, now, would you be going using a 50-cent coupon at the store if you had all the money you needed to drive a Rolls Royce? Would you be driving, 5 miles out of the way to save 2 cents on gasoline, right? So the language and the action have to be aligned with your thoughts and beliefs. So when our thoughts and beliefs are this way and our language is that way, you're stepping on the gas and you're stepping on the brake at the same time. So part of my coaching is to coach people into better language and help them understand what kind of even minimal actions that are non-zero in the positive direction to align themselves. And once you're aligned, your manifestation shows up.
It's so interesting. I can only imagine how many people don't even realize that they're doing that.
Nobody realizes it. We want to connect with ourselves. We know when we say, "Oh, I can't afford that. I'm no good at that, and that's too much for me." It makes you feel good saying something that you know. It's a way of connecting. You say something you're sure of. There's a better way to do it, and that's in the positive sense.
Right. Well, making the choice to be positive. But it seems like everything around us is always so negative. You turn on a commercial or, look at billboards and everything's like heavy duty negative. And how do you get past that? How do you, it's like they put all that in your subconscious to kind of keep you in that state. And how do you kind of become more aware and find that more positive
That's
outlook?
exactly what you do. You become aware of it. Once you learn it, now you become aware of it. It's like, I don't know, if you buy a car, right? Now you're driving this little red Chevy, right? All of a sudden you see all the red Chevys on the road. Wow, I didn't realize there were these many red Chevys on the road. Just by getting educated or, buying the idea of, my God, look at all these negative ideas out there. Now I'm aware of them. And it's a practice to start to sweep them out from your language and to, deny them entry into your belief system.
So what about profanity? Okay, profanity by itself is negative, isn't it? Or
Is it?
Or is it like
Expressive.
I remember seeing an ad on Facebook. There's like the F bomb like 6 times. I'm like, wow. But I was just like, okay. Does that add to the positive or to the negative, or what do you think?
I think the intention is to amplify one's emotion, amplify one's expression. It has negative associations with it. It's probably best to, raise the vibration of your language by saying things. Maybe if you have to say something that's expressive, maybe you say something that sounds like it and you feel better. It's comical.
And laughter, right there, laughter and joy. I mean, I think that's something else that needs to be injected into people, especially now. It's like,
Absolutely.
just like laugh at things, just.
That is a great point. And I think one of the best things we can do to heal the planet, if you want to say that.
Yes, let's heal the planet, please.
As a contribution to the collective, to raise it, is just to enjoy yourself, just to feel happiness, just to feel joy. Just forget about all the distractions, all the responsibilities for just a few minutes. And just think of something that's funny in your life. I never forget the time I was in the kitchen. My father was there, and my father had said some pretty oddball things that were just funny. And he had this, those banana hangers. It's like a curve and it's got a hook and you just hook the bananas on them. Right. My father never saw one of those before. And he said, "What do you do with that thing?" I'm like, "Well, this is what you do." So I took the bananas. They were in one of those plastic baggies. And I skewered the baggie on the hook. I go, "There, that's what you do." That to me is one of the funniest moments of my life. I don't know why, but the thing is, we can build up a repertoire of comical memories. It's so easy to remember the negative stuff.
Right.
But when it comes to remember the positives, we really got to work hard at it. But you can do it. And when you do, write them down. Make a little repertoire of things to call to mind. And you'll find more and more and more of them. Doing that, you will feel so wonderful after you do that. You won't believe it.
Do you think we'll ever get to the point of remembering our own past lives on our own?
I believe so. I think it's a gift that we don't remember them now because it would be totally overwhelming for this limited body. Until we raise to a higher consciousness, the kind that can handle it, I don't think we'll have much spontaneous recollection of past lives. We'll suspect, we'll have suspicions like we knew each other in a past life, you
Right,
know.
right.
But I think that's as far as it goes in our waking consciousness, unless you're of the highest level of spiritual accomplishment, you know. And most people, I mean, we can refer to David Hawkins' scale of consciousness right now. If anybody's familiar with Dr. David Hawkins, he was a psychiatrist who did a huge body of research using kinesiology. And he was asking basically true false questions about a whole array of things, you know, even historical things. But essentially, he crafted this scale of consciousness, 0 to 1,000, and it was a logarithmic scale. So right around 200, it was biased to, you know, below 200 it was biased negative. So the emotions from 0 to 200 were like shame, guilt, fear, anger, all those things. And you kind of stay in those low states when you dwell on those things, right? You feel those things. Above 200, you get into integrity, right?
Mhm.
Integrity, neutrality. You get to logic and reason. You get into love, unconditional love, and then finally all the way up to peace, joy, and enlightenment. So the thing about all of that is, if we are in a higher state of consciousness, we're affecting the average of the human collective. Now, people in the state of 0 to 200, they're, you know, basically in the onesie twosie points for
Uh,
every notch on the scale. When you
mhm.
go up above 200, you're starting to get 10 times your impact, 300, 100 times your impact, 1,000 times, 10,000, up to, you know, when you get up into the 600 zone, you're affecting millions of people all by your own consciousness as a collective consciousness of the human race.
Wow.
And the point I'm getting at here is there is an average, and you know the average had been below 200 for
Mhm.
a very long time. We as a country, I believe, calibrate well above 200, which is beautiful. It's why we haven't gone to oblivion. But all it takes is a bunch of people, a small bunch of people, to balance the whole rest of the world, right? If they get into the 5 and 600s, you're balancing millions of people. So you can see right away it would only be a, you know, a few hundred or a few thousand people to keep us from going off the edge. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And as you progress farther and farther, you're not only off the edge, but you're actually rising into a realm where there's a positive momentum, you know?
Wow. That's exciting. But I'm visualizing what you're saying, and all of a sudden I imagine, what if there was like a higher consciousness for the whole collective? You know, because we ourselves have higher consciousness, but what if there was, you know, the collective as one? Is there a higher consciousness for that? And
I believe so. I
and
believe you hit the nail on the head.
and how would we connect with that? I mean, could we do a QHHT session with that?
Yeah, I think you can. You know, it's funny that I would draw the analogy we as our, you know, talking to our body, right? When you talk to your subconscious, you're basically reaching your body because your subconscious, let's say, is in touch with every system in your body, right? You don't have to think with your cognitive mind how to beat your heart or how to breathe or how to digest something, right?
Mhm.
Your subconscious mind is in charge of that and it happens automatically for you.
Mhm.
You can talk to it and say, hey, you know, how about that blood pressure? What's causing that? And it'll show you some images and stories. You say, well, geez, you know, didn't we learn that lesson? Isn't that kind of not in this body or something like that? You know, there's all kinds of things we can do. Blood pressure goes down. So if we're effectively talking to the collective of our body, so
Mhm.
why couldn't we talk the collective of our body as a human race?
Right. I like that. Which is, what would we say? You know, it's like, could we agree on anything?
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of things. I couldn't think of anything off the top of my head now, but um,
Nonviolence.
yeah, we could put some thought into that.
Put more joy into it. Just inject it with joy.
Yeah, I've
Yep.
heard people channel the human collective before.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I
Wow.
forget where I heard it, but you know, we can get into. I mean, your higher self is in touch with everything. So, you know, there's information we can connect to with our higher self.
Wow. The
Yeah.
part and the whole. That's exciting. It's
Very
really
interesting. Very interesting.
and to think that it really just starts with one person. One person wanting to know more, wanting to heal something or get in touch with, get into alignment. It is exciting, very exciting.
It's like I say, I think we heal the planet one person at a time.
Right. And that changes the collective. Yeah. It's very
Yeah. And there's this thing called the 100th monkey effect.
Oh,
And-
I think,
right?
go ahead, please share that story. I love that story.
So, well, I mean,
If you
without getting into the idea, I think people might already know what 100th monkey is. Let's say one monkey learns a lesson. He learns to wash his fruit in the river in Madagascar, and then all of a sudden, all the monkeys in West Africa are washing theirs. It's when a certain bunch of them, a certain number, you reach a certain threshold that start doing it, then all the rest of them just get the idea without ever having talked to each other. So I believe if enough people benefit from a past life regression, I think the rest of the culture, the rest of society gets the idea, hey, maybe I should get myself a past life regression. And that would become a standard practice, you know?
Now, is that something you can do to yourself? I mean, you as a practitioner.
Yeah, everybody can. It takes practice though. I like to draw the analogy of you want to go downtown to have a nice dinner at a nice restaurant.
Mhm.
And you call up the chauffeur, says, "Hey, you know what? I just want to go downtown. Can you give me a ride?" "Yeah, sure." I'm your chauffeur. I get out, open the back door, you get in, we drive downtown. I know the way. I know the restaurant. I'm taking care of parking. You go in, I even go in with you. We have a nice dinner with your higher self.
Yeah,
We enjoy dinner. We pay for the dinner. We go out, we get in the car. I drive you home. Now, probably you have a car of your own, so you can get in your car now. You know the way downtown, you know the restaurant. Get in your car. You can drive yourself downtown for your own dinner now, if you really would like to. Some people love to get driven downtown all the time. That's perfectly fine too.
Right.
But that's the idea. You can actually do it for yourself if you like to.
Oh.
It just takes a little effort, little, intention.
So if someone wanted to reach out to you, for a session, whether in person or online, how can they get a hold of you?
I have a website. It can be found as bostonquantumhealing.com or QHHTboston.com.
And you
And
don't live in Boston, right?
yeah, I'm a true Bostonian. I was born and brought up here.
Okay. Well, I will definitely share that link.
Yeah,
I think I would love to have a session with you. That sounds really interesting. Of course, it'd have to be online.
I would be honored to be your guide.
That would be really exciting. Be really interesting to see what would happen.
Yeah, I'll bet you have some interesting past lives.
Or something.
I mean, for all the gifts and talents you have, I got to think they came from someplace.
No, it'd be interesting to dive into that and see what happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really feel things are shifting so fast right now, and I hear people say, "Oh, things are moving so slowly." I'm like, no, I mean, the day is over before you know it, and it just feels like there are shifts happening left and right.
There are a
So
lot of shifts, yeah. And I just make a note of this. I mean, I see so much evidence. Um, I've even created a little kind of a red pill PowerPoint for myself to just gather my thoughts of all the evidence we're seeing, right down to the twinkling stars that really aren't stars in the sky. I think if you look carefully, there's a bunch that are spinning up there that are really not stars, and they're stationary, but they track the stars. I, I I really think those are something very special, and
kind of
that's
makes you
just
wonder,
more evidence of the times.
it kind of makes you wonder, have they always been there, or are they new? Or are
I
we?
noticed them a good year and a half, 2 years ago. They've been there.
Very
And
exciting
it's
times.
really fascinating.
It's like awesomeness. I don't know. I'm excited. I find it exciting. It's like I'm hoping for full disclosure, and it's like I just feel like really good things are going to happen.
You
They are.
know, it's said that disclosure happens within until people are ready. They're just not going to admit it, no matter what you show them.
Right.
So there has to be this awakening that takes place on their schedule.
Mm,
And I like to draw this analogy too. If you're, talking to a person, giving them the whole truth,
mm,
nothing but the truth, and they're just totally out to lunch, they're not paying attention, they're not aware of anything. You can tell them the most black and white information that's the most obvious thing in the world, and they're not gonna receive it.
right.
So I look at it like this. Let's say you got two college roommates living in a sharing a dorm room.
Mm,
And one's the good student. He goes to the library all day, studies. He comes home 9:30, he gets into bed, sleeps. The other roommate's out carousing down at the pub till 1, 2 in the morning. He
right.
comes back all lit up. He goes to bed. Which one do you think wants to wake up at 6:30 in the morning? Okay. If the good student wakes up and says, "Hey, buddy, you want to grab breakfast with me?" He's going to take his alarm clock and throw it at you,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
He ain't waking up till, noontime.
Exactly. But he wakes up eventually, right?
Yes, yes. Most people will wake up. Yes.
Yeah. So definitely exciting times. Well, I will definitely reach out to you, figure out a time to, have this kind of session. That sounds
Okay.
very exciting to me. And I will post your link in the description below. And thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time and your wisdom. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Sophia, the honor is mine. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me today. And God bless you.
I will talk with you again soon. It's like, QH, I have to be QH. It's like, yeah, it sounds kind of exciting. Very exciting.
It's a lot of fun. It really is. It's a lot of fun.
How deep will we go? All right. Thank you, Jeffrey. You have a beautiful night. And thanks again.
Thank you, Sophia. Bye now.